those of
Amen.
you who, thank you. For those of you that are new to Justice and Beyond, know that we've been doing this for um, uh, nearly a decade. Where our motivation is to amplify the voices of brown and black people, and to create a platform where issues that are affecting brown and black people and others are brought to attention so that we can do what we need to do to educate, to agitate when necessary, and to mobilize to be able to do what we need to do to make a difference and to move the needle on some things. And so, as we've been doing this, we've come about some new ways of organizing. And one of the ways we organize is by using who we call pillars. Pillars are those that have made it their goal and given of their time to organize Justice and Beyond. That is to be a part of the planning, to be a part of the vision casting for it. And so the pillars are individual groups or individual people, rather, that meet together on Tuesdays. I think we changed our time. I think it's 4 o'clock. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But we meet on Tuesdays, and anyone is
4:30.
welcome. 4:30 on Tuesdays. Anyone is welcome to be able to join us, and we'd love to have you be a pillar of this great work that we've been doing. And so, with that said, we are so excited tonight to be able to hold this forum. Many of us just need further education on how the city budget works and the ins and outs of it, where money is going, how it is spent, how money needs to, how we need to keep an eye on it, and how we can advocate that it go in different places. And so we have two very special guests on tonight, our panelists for tonight that we are very pleased to have here tonight. Um, First is Nellie. We are so grateful for you to be here tonight. Would you take a moment to just introduce yourself, and then we'll get rolling after both of our panelists have introduced themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nellie Catzen. I'm Executive Director of the Committee for a Better New Orleans. We are a civic engagement organization working to help build and support civic leaders in New Orleans. So we both help people outside city government understand, navigate, and influence the decisions that impact you. And since power sharing is a two-way conversation, we also help people inside City Hall be intentionally inclusive of and responsive to that power.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, Nellie. Cameron, would you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Cameron Okeke. Pronouns are they and them, and I'm a senior program associate at the Vera Institute of Justice. We are a 60-year-old non-for-profit that does work around criminal legal reform. We push for the kind of decreasing of the criminal justice system and the increasing of investment in communities. I'm here representing the Big Easy Budget Coalition. We are, and I will tell plenty about that during my presentation, but in short, we are a coalition made up of local New Orleanian organizations that push for greater investment in the thriving and free New Orleans.
All right, very good. I want to remind everybody as who has come on the line to join us for this forum tonight. If you have questions, as Valerie said earlier, go ahead and put them in the chat just as this conversation is going on. That is being monitored, and we will ask those questions when the time for questions comes around 6 o'clock. But for me to better understand, again, Nellie and Cameron, it's so good to have you, and we appreciate y'all offering up your expertise and your knowledge about this. As we get started, your presentation is together, or both of you have different things that you want to present?
We are presenting separately. So I'm going to give a rundown on how the budget works and how the city ordinarily spends their money. And Cameron, representing the Big Easy Budget Coalition, of which CBNO is a part, we'll talk through what some of the priorities of our 70+ member coalition are for this year's budget.
All right, very good. Well, take it away, Nellie. We appreciate it.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. And put this in full screen mode. All right. Are you seeing my screen? I can't see all of you,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna get a
yes,
sweet,
we can
just a
see.
verbal yes from one person. Thank you so much, Pastor Manning. Well, thanks everyone, and good evening. Again, I'm Nellie Catzen. I direct the Committee for a Better New Orleans. We're here tonight to talk about the city's budget. By a show of real or virtual hands, let me know. Have you ever participated in the budget before? Raise your real or virtual hand if yes, you have. I've got a couple of yeses, a lot of silence. It's okay. The system is complicated and we're here to help you figure it out. So I'm going to start with a quote from Dr. King that budgets are moral documents. What he meant by that is what we fund is what we value. If you looked at my bank statements, you would see that I spend a lot of money on my dog and on going out to eat. Those are both things that I value very greatly. And we're going to talk about how that shakes out when you're looking at your tax dollars. The city's money is your money. It is our money. And so we at CBNO believe that the people should have a say in what happens with that money. This presentation is intended to help you understand how the budget works, who the deciders are, and where you can show up in order to make a difference. So first of all, who makes the budget? The city council has the power of the purse strings, but how it typically goes is the administration proposes, that's the mayor and the rest of the executive branch, the department heads who report to the mayor, and then the city council approves and allocates it. They are the legislative branch. This is done not only once, but also every time the budget needs to change. The timeline varies a little bit year to year. It's laid out in the city charter, though, so the steps are always the same. So the budget has actually already been largely underway. You can see at the top in the black bubbles are the internal process that the city is doing. And then on the bottom in the white bubbles is how the city's public process has generally gone. So beginning around March, the city starts to set their priorities and they have internal meetings to develop their budgets, to determine how much money they expect to have, to determine how they want to spend that money. And each department head gets to present their own budget to the chief administrative office, the CAO. At that point, the CAO compiles the proposed budget. Usually around that time, the mayor has her town hall meeting. This year they were postponed. The meeting is scheduled for the 27th of this month. That's next Tuesday at UNO in the evening. And then the deadline to send the completed proposed budget to city council is October 1st. We, the public, get to see it on that very day. And almost immediately, the city council begins their public hearings. Those this year are already on the calendar. I will point y'all to where at the end of our presentation today. But that's about 2 or 3 a week of all-day meetings where department heads present their proposed budgets to the city council. The city council and the general public get to make comments and questions. And then it kind of goes back behind closed doors again until the budget is approved on December 1st. Usually we don't see the approved budget until the next spring after it's approved. We'll talk more about ways that we can improve this process a bit later. So how much money are we talking about here? Again, this was a question I received from somebody on the call beforehand. I don't know what the 2025 budget is going to be, but generally it doesn't change that much year to year. Another thing that we as communities seeking greater investment can comment on and can seek improvement on. But we're going to work from the 2024 operating budget, which is about $1.5 billion. It's sorted into 2 buckets. And this is important because the different funds have different rules. The general fund is about $776 million, about half of our dollars. And this is the money that the city raises. More than half come from taxes. We'll look at a full breakdown in a moment. And the rest is from fees and fines. This money is discretionary. This is important because it means the city can use this money how they want. There is nobody externally to the city telling them how they're supposed to use this money or how they're allowed to use this money. There's a little caveat to that, but we'll get into that later. The other fund, by contrast, is restricted funding. This is money that's from other sources like the state, the federal government, millages. It's restricted to a particular cause. Most of the money in the other fund usually comes from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that specifically has to be used on housing, and it has to be used in a particular way. When we're helping people advocate, we generally have folks go for the general fund, but we'll talk through where those revenues come from. So where does the money come from? You and me and a bunch of other people. This is a breakdown of the city's discretionary funding. Again, the city raises this money and they can use it how they want. You can see in red here, the largest portion comes from sales and other taxes. About 24% comes from property taxes. A smaller percentage comes from service charges, like what we pay to have our trash picked up, and courts services, or permitting and other things like that. And then everything else kind of falls in between. You see a little bit intergovernmental, that's money that's being moved from, say, state funds into these funds, or moved from department to department, licenses, permits, etc. So that's generally where the money comes from. Big takeaway here is about 2/3 of it comes from taxes. The other fund, again, this is restricted funding that has to be spent on a very specific cause, which means it's hard to advocate for this money. Most comes from, you can see, federal grants. This is 2024, so we were still seeing a lot of the American Rescue Plan money in here. HUD is the next largest category. And sorry, my Zoom controls were in the way here. A lot of miscellaneous special revenues that are dedicated to a particular service. You'll see the library funds millage, that's in orange there. That's of particular interest to a lot of folks. State and local foundation grants. So if the city makes an application to a grant, like say it's Bloomberg Philanthropies or anyone else, that goes into this bucket as well. This fund is restricted. So where does the money go? This is a breakdown of how the city spends our general fund, how they budgeted our general fund last year. Everything in blue is our criminal legal system. So you can see the darkest blue here with 20% of the budget, about $65 million is the police, the NOPD alone. This next shade here with the 12.6% is our courts and criminal legal system. And then this lighter blue is our non-police emergency services, like the EMS, fire, and the emergency preparedness office that helps notify us when there's hurricanes happening and other emergencies. Next in yellow is our good government. That is everything that it takes to keep the government running. That's your city council, your legal, the Office of Inspector General, the mayor's core office, and offices like that. In light green, this is sustainable communities. I should add that these are categories that CBNO devised. They are not the categories that the city uses in the budget. They budget by department individually, and it can be really hard to see sort of what the impacts are of those. So we develop these into buckets. I do have slides that break down each bucket for you and lines out which departments we've included in those buckets. But for the sake of an overview, this tends to be how people think about the money as they see it. So in sustainable communities, we're talking about drainage, we're talking about parks, we're talking about streets improvements. That comes at about 13.9%. Our smallest categories, so small that they're not even labeled, are youth, which is about 4% of the city's annual budget, health, which is about 6% of the annual budget, and that itty bitty sliver down at the bottom here between the gray and the teal is housing. This is, again, the amount of funds that the city is spending of their own money that nobody's telling them what to do with. This is how they budget it. If you added in all the money that they get from grants and other restricted sources, it looks slightly different. You can see The category for youth expands a tiny bit to 5.3%. The category for housing expands significantly in dark green. Down here at the bottom is 7%. And the share of funding to the carceral system goes down considerably, but is still more, we're still spending more on police alone than we're spending on health and youth combined. So as a whole, for public safety, those blue categories, we're spending about 32%. Our total sustainable communities plus housing funding, so that's our streets, that's our housing, that's potholes getting filled, that's flooding being addressed, is only 25%. Looking at this, you would think we live in the safest city in America. Pause for laughs. I will absolutely be sharing the slide deck. Yes, it's also available all the time on our website, cbno.org. If we have a little bit of time, I'm happy to go into the full breakdown of these, but if not, you can find it on our website. Tell me in the chat which you'd rather me do.
I think we can go into it.
All right.
We're fine. Yes.
Boom. So thanks for your patience here. My control's perpetually in the way. View. All right, so this is the breakdown. Public safety. This is, again, the general fund. We focus here because it is where you as a resident have the most control over how the city moves their money. So you can see the police with $160 million. I misspoke earlier. It is $160 million goes to the NOPD alone. Next in this category is our courts and criminal legal system, with about 55 million of that going to the sheriff's office, about 36 million going to judicial retirement fund, sorry, 364,000 rather to judicial retirement. The bulk of that here is the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, and our various courts, the traffic court, the criminal court, the civil court, and etc. Coroner's office also has a little bit in there. At the bottom here with $169 million is our non-police emergency category. The city condenses public safety as public health. So it puts all of these and the health department into one category. We think that that's a misrepresentation of what the city's actually spending. And so we break it down in this way. So in non-police emergency services, you have about $136 million for the fire department, 19 million only for EMS, and $14 million for the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Together, these three categories make up more than half of the general fund expenses. The health category is about 4% of our general fund. This includes the health department and the mosquito, termite, and rodent control board. I'm with you, Raymond, on what we call the category that includes police and the carceral system. Within good government, I've gotten a lot of laughter and pushback about how we talk about this, but our ideal is that we will be having a good government, and with the expenditures in this category, hopefully it's keeping our government running effectively. 52 million of that is in finance. That is the department that's responsible for taking in and moving out money and keeping our books clear and up to a standard so that we don't lose our credit rating. 45% of that goes to the chief administrative office that manages the budget, as well as a bunch of other internal workings of City Hall. City Council is here, IT, property management, and the mayor's core office, as well as law, risk management, inspector general, the civil service, the Office of Performance and Accountability, OPSE, the secondary, police secondary, no, OPSE, I'll look up what that is, the Ethic Review Board, Criminal Justice Coordination, and the Independent Police Monitor. Those are all in our yellow category. Under sustainable communities, we've put $110 million. That's our sanitation, who's responsible for picking up our trash. Public Works, which is responsible for our streets, sidewalks, and lights. Parks and Parkways, which is responsible for neutral grounds and green spaces that are not NORD parks. Safety and permits, that is both for when you or I want to throw a second line and for when a developer wants to develop a building. The Office of Community and Economic Development focuses on attracting and maintaining businesses in the community. The City Planning Commission, which is responsible for land use decisions. And then less than $3 million each, a bunch of little smaller offices that are each responsible for a portion of making our cities sustainable, including, I'll highlight the Office of Resilience and Sustainability, which is taking a role of managing infrastructure more broadly. They have folks focused on transportation, on drainage, etc. That office has seen a lot of growth recently. You're also seeing in this category workforce investment, and it's an important piece of keeping our communities sustainable. Is there a breakdown, Ray? I'm seeing in the comments, is there a breakdown of the $52 million? How does that work in terms of software, salaries, consultants? The city generally gives 2 lines, staff and other. Definitely leaves something to be desired. In the miscellaneous category with $19 million, that's the Office of Performance and Accountability. That does data and dashboards for the city. Service and Innovation Management, and other administrative expenses under the Chief Administrative Office. Under youth, this is always a really hot topic. As we know, our young people deserve significant investment, and certainly a lot more than they get. Something that's important to note is a lot of the things that people are used to seeing in a city budget does not exist in the City of New Orleans budget. What we're missing here is a major component of many young people's lives, schools. Because the school board is not part of the City of New Orleans, we are not seeing that investment here. Our youth category includes NORD. It includes YouthWorks internship program, the Mayor's Office of Youth and Families, STEM NOLA, NOMA, the Museum of Art, and the Mayor's Summer Youth Program. That said, a lot of different departments service youth, but don't service exclusively youth. Those figures are not included here. We believe, and a lot of folks who we've spoken with agree, that more could be invested in the ability of our young people to thrive in our community. And this is something you'll hear as well from Cameron as an opportunity for advocacy. So there, again, is our overall breakdown of how the city spent money last year. I'm going to take us just to one more slide to talk through how you can get involved in getting involved in the budget. So the most important things, one, is to align your ask with the city's priorities, understand how the city is thinking of the budget, and know where your request falls within that. The second thing is to know what you're asking for. In particular, if you're asking for one-time funding for that the city prefers for that to go to a one-time use. If you're going for a longer-term programmatic fund, knowing that you're looking for them to come up with a new place to find money is really important in your approach. And then finally, and most importantly, stay vigilant. The budget changes all the time, twice or 3 times a month. The budget is changing, which means there's always opportunity for you to advocate. So if you go into this budget hearing process and you don't get what you want, please don't give up. Again, the budget is changing all the time. It's a little mushy when it comes to math. And so there is never a bad time to contact your public officials. That is 3 people who represent you, both of your district council person and 2 at-large council people. 4, if you want to include the mayor or her department heads, to advocate for what you want to see. I will send you all this, but I don't think it's that important. Lastly, a better budget process would include more and earlier opportunities to engage. accessible data on budget and spending. It takes me hours with a lot of volunteers to put together these charts because the budget isn't released in a way that's very accessible. And proactive and equitable community engagement process. We have a lot of ideas about how that could happen. We are proud to work alongside the Big Easy Budget Coalition in advocating for not only substantive changes to how we spend our money, but also real systemic changes to how those decisions are made. I will stop there. That's
All
my
right.
contact
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nellie. That was incredibly informative. It's so informative that I think what we'll do is take some questions now. I was going to
Sure.
wait till both you and Cameron both presented, but let's pause for some questions that others might have right now while they are digesting this information. Is there anyone that has questions at this time? I know Valerie and Sylvia are monitoring that. Do you see anybody that has questions or?
Yes, Pastor Manning. I
Okay.
see Mr. Sweet. Mr. Sweet have a question. Mr. Sweet, you want to ask your question or you want me to read your question? I'll read it. His question is in the chat. His question is about, is there a breakdown of the 52 million, comma, is there a salary software, comma, consultants?
She had already answered that, Val.
Okay. Let me see. Well, let me see. That's all. Okay. She also, for everybody information, she also, Nellie also put her contact information in the chat. You all can copy down her link and save her link and send her. There is the budget that she just read, but you also can use the same link because she has the website to that budget link. You can send her emails or you can find out about the organization. So we Pastor Manny, we have
Let me
she
just
got her
ask.
email right here.
Let me just
Okay, we
ask
have
if
a
there's.
question. Mrs. Sweet have a question. He said, other than the fake public safety comments, is there a theme? What is that theme about what they care about?
That's a complicated question. I would say the best answer to that will be found in the mayor's budget presentation, which she will give next Tuesday evening from 5 to 6:30, or from 5 to 6 rather, is a resource fair. And then from 6 to 7:30 is really the bulk of her presentation. What I expect to see there is a rundown of sort of like the top highlights. Oftentimes the mayor highlights the things that are most attractive or she deems to be most attractive to the community. She'll talk about how many potholes they're going to fill and how much millions of dollars were spent last year on road work. She'll talk about some of the like shiny, new and exciting programs that the city is doing that she really wants to highlight. In general, the way you saw me breeze over this slide, and let me pull it back up for you, Mr. Sweet. The mayor uses these categories to talk about the themes within the budget. This is her forward together strategic framework. She's been using this since she was elected. So public safety as public health, again, both of those things into one category. Investing in infrastructure, quality of life, ensuring equitable and consistent access to quality services, economic development to promote inclusive intergenerational economic growth and attract businesses and residents, and to have good and inclusive governance. I think the extent to which the administration is succeeding on this is within the eye of the beholder. Certainly the mayor has generally like to tout success on all of these categories. She often hears a lot of questions and concerns from the public about to what extent those really are cared about. I guess that's the most diplomatic way I can answer your question. Did I get to it, Mr. Sweet?
Yeah, thank you, Nellie. I have a question. I didn't hear anything about transit, transportation.
Great question. So again, in New Orleans, we don't do it that way. So the transit system, the RTA, has its own and separate budget process. We are actually currently working on a project with the RTA and with Ride New Orleans. Occasionally, and you saw this past year if you were watching the budget closely, occasionally the city of New Orleans gives money to the RTA to fund a particular program. So they just gave $2.5 million, thanks to our advocacy with the Big Easy Budget Coalition, for free fares for youth. That's a program that's going to roll out later this fall. It's a 1-year pilot program, but generally the RTA is responsible for its own money. So that's a fully separate process.
Thank
All right.
you. Okay, Pastor Manny.
Yeah, I just
I
had a
had a
couple of
question.
questions.
Oh, go
Okay.
ahead, Pastor.
Yeah. Let me ask just a couple of questions. In regards to the allocation towards the youth, have we seen this amount shift over the years so it has become greater, or has it decreased, or how has that varied over the years? Let maybe just take since this administration has been in place.
I have these data because I've been maintaining my own spreadsheet, but I don't have on hand anything really notable. I can take another look at that while Cameron is presenting and come back to you. But my
Okay.
generalized experience has been these values have shifted very, very little.
Okay. And yeah, and then my question is, when people go and advocate for a shifting or a proposal that more money be given different places, and I mean, this goes kind of towards my cynicalness when it comes to speaking out at, even though I do it a lot, speaking out at city council meetings, that they really don't care what you say. They've already made up their minds. Do we see things actually shift when people go and advocate for a change?
This is a really tricky question, and I think your cynicism is well placed when it comes to this. Because really, as you saw in the budget process, most of the budget has been decided by the time the mayor has her town hall, and by the time the council has its hearings. Again, like I said, the importance of staying vigilant, I think, is really notable here. The budget generally doesn't change a lot. You're not going to see a massive shift that changes the shape of the pie chart that I just presented to you, for example. But some things do get accomplished after the budget hearings. For example, actually, the city just sent a press release about this today. They absolved a bunch of people's medical debt. That was something that came up like on the last day of budget hearings and was passed to the tune of like $100 million. And so while the general status quo is that this stuff doesn't change, we are status quo changers and challengers in this group. And so I encourage people to go anyway. I encourage you to temper your expectations and to keep with it. I would not necessarily expect a all-out success by showing up once to one budget committee meeting or one budget hearing. But absolutely, this stuff can and does shift. And when we work together, we can be really successful.
All right. And then my final question, even though I've got about 20 more, but I'll just ask my final one before we move on to Cameron. The city budget will take a big hit, is what I'm thinking, once we're no longer getting these allocated funds that we got post-pandemic. Do you know how big that hit is going to look like? And when that's going to happen, when we won't see those dollars represented in our budget anymore?
That money was replacing a big hit that the city took because of the pandemic. Being a largely tourism-based economy, and since our tax revenue was largely derived from tourism and hotel bookings and things like that, the city had took a significant hit that those funds that we got from the American Rescue Plan replaced. The amount of money that we got from the American Rescue Plan for over 4 years is about the same as about 60% of the city's usual annual budget.
Okay.
A lot of our systems have come back. And so the hole that money was supposed to be filling has filled itself to some extent. When that money is gone, there's certainly, I'm more concerned about that money being clawed back because we didn't spend it fast enough or in the right way. That's something that we're keeping an eye on as a coalition.
Okay.
There is also new things coming down the pike that will increase our revenue substantially. One of the things that the city's financial advisors are looking at is the impact of the Super Bowl and, importantly, Taylor Swift's visit.
And when is she
Both of
coming?
those, she's coming in October, and it's been talked
Okay.
about in the budget. The only reason I knew was because I follow the budget committee before the billboards, that it was coming up in those conversations. So,
Okay.
revenue comes and goes. There's plenty to work on filling that hole, and the city has a lot of money they haven't spent. So,
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Nellie.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Can I
We're
ask
gonna.
my
Oh, yes.
question?
Go ahead. Yes, please, Sylvia. Go ahead.
Finally. I wanted to just ask, how much influence do you think the communities have, especially in New Orleans, because we've been seeing so little and we have been begging for so much?
in this fight, it's easy to get hopeless, I think, especially in a community like New Orleans East, where the people have demanded so much of what is deserved and owed to
Yes,
them,
ma'am.
and have repeatedly been ignored and shut down. I am also seeing, I'm 11 years new to New Orleans, but in the time that I've been in this work, I'm seeing a major upswell of community voice in the East and organizing, right? Like people really coming together and demanding what they need in the Lower Ninth Ward and a lot of different communities, right? People coming together and demanding what they need. I was super encouraged to see that letter that came out of a community organization in the East saying, hey, with the Super Bowl, don't forget about us. People are going to be driving through and to and past New Orleans East on
But
the
that's
way.
what we did.
And yes, indeed. And that was her. And I saw it in a number of different places, right? And so I think that, again, on your first try, you may not be successful. And we're seeing a different approach to accountability, a different approach to, in the 10 years that CBNO has been organizing around the budget, we've never seen so many people care outside of our little bubble about what the city is doing with their budget. And so we're really in an opportune moment. I'm excited to hand it over to Cameron, because they have some exciting wins that I hope will inspire more community action, and more community involvement.
Nellie, you have one more. You have Brooke. Brooke would like to ask a question.
Yes, no problem. Hey, Brooke.
Hi. I just have one question. I wondered if there was any city that you could point to that would actually has a more progressive, more participatory budget process that we could model ourselves on.
Totally. There are dozens. And some of them function sort of like New Orleans does, and some of them don't. We were actually just at a conference where I was actually feeling both disappointed and validated by the fact that people all over the country are dealing with the same kinds of problems that we're dealing with around municipal budgeting processes. One idea that I find really interesting that we're exploring is participatory budgeting. This is something they do. It was originated in Bogota, Colombia, but it's all over the place. Many American cities, including New York City and Birmingham and many others, use participatory budgeting. This is where a government decides on a certain amount of money. Sometimes they pilot it in a council district. They say 1% of the city's budget is going to be directly allocated in response to what people want to see. And then they have a democratic process around that funding. That's one example. It is, I think it's an interesting model to explore. Fundamentally, how CBNO sees it, like, I think it could be interesting for New Orleans, but it also is just 1% when what we're talking about is a huge amount of money and the overall balance needs to shift. And so if we do advocate for that, it would not be in the absence of also a new system of approaching the budget by and large.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Nellie. That was incredible and just very important information and you presented it in a spectacular way. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Without further ado, let's welcome Cameron as they present to us today all that we need to know. Thank you, Cameron.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Can everyone
welcome, Kevin.
see the presentation?
Yes.
Amazing, perfect. Hi, everyone. It is always a joy and somewhat daunting to go after Nellie, but I will do my best. I am here to represent the Big Easy Budget Coalition, and I'm hopefully going to kind of blaze us through a little presentation about what we do, what our goal is, how we came to be. As with all things, I will start with a little bit of the history. I think it's really important to kind of know like how things got started. So. The Big Easy Budget Coalition, I mean, as Nelly has kind of talked about a little bit, and we've kind of talked about the American Rescue Plan already, kind of came to mind after we kind of wanted to get people galvanized around trying to get the city to use the American Rescue Plan dollars in a way that's effective in serving the community. Kind of explicitly in the doctrine of the American Rescue Plan dollars, I think $398 million the city was aimed to receive over the course of 2 tranches. It was kind of supposed to be for people and to refill that revenue, but also to just kind of be relief for people after the lockdown and then the pandemic losses. But we were seeing trends. Vera, we're a national organization, and we've seen trends across the country of a lot of that money slowly but surely kind of being sucked up by carceral structures, by policing, by prisons, and we kind of galvanized to want to do something about that. We were new to the budget space, and Nellie's organization was wonderfully a great partner of ours, and like we began to build a really strong and powerful coalition. And so the American Rescue Plan Act has a bunch of different rules about it, but straightforwardly, it's pretty clear that you can use it for things that disproportionately help communities that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, around community violence interventions, around community health workers, around housing. There's a bunch of different ways to use this money, but kind of like the way that I imagine it is if the the municipal budget process is a hose where you put money in one end and out the other end comes money for communities of color. There's a bunch of holes in it where that money leaks out into the hands of developers, prisons, police officers, politicians, etc. And that the American Rescue Plan dollars kind of functioned as a giant flood of water coming through a already holy hose. And so the process really revealed a lot of the kind of failures and the difficulties of the system. So we started off writing a letter, as any organizing organization does, to the mayor and the city council members, basically arguing for this money to be spent correctly, because we were seeing that money was already going to law enforcement to the tune of $22 million. And we really wanted to kind of reach out to our network and connect with people to get folks to sign on to this letter. We wrote a op-ed about how we need more money for services. But after that, we kind of really leaned into realizing that like there was a bunch of different people from across all these different backgrounds. We had climate activists, we had transportation folks, we had people who were doing housing, people who were doing mental health, who all wanted recovery. And so once we sent the letter in and we saw more and more people being interested, we kind of began to really see the power of having a coalition. And I think this is where we really realized that what makes the Big Easy Budget Coalition special and how it kind of came to be was that we wanted to partner with advocates who are fighting in all these different fields to kind of sing one unified song. But by like having multiple sectors show up for each other and parrot each other's calls, we would actually make a bigger cacophony of sound to get the city hall and to get the mayor and get folks to notice. I think especially for us, Vera, as an organization that does primarily criminal legal reform, there isn't a lot of work. There isn't a lot, like our lane is very, very narrow. We're like, this is what you need to do to decrease the jail population, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the budget, a lot of it, as Nellie pointed out, goes to the criminal justice system. But those people in that space aren't often in the same conversation with folks who are doing housing work and folks who are doing community equity work and folks doing youth development. And so we saw that we could really galvanize folks to make some really sizable change. And that's how the Big Easy Budget Coalition came to be. And so from there, we we kind of began to build infrastructure from the project. The existing network of folks who knew each other. And I invited more people, and people who had signed on to the letter. We tried to make sure they remained engaged and involved. And basically today it's going, pretty well. We have a lot of different organizations, a lot of different power in the room. We've gotten organizations from all over the city, all different sectors to sign on, and we write our letters, but also we show up and we give community. We give testimony and hearings and share information. One of the greatest joys to me as like kind of the manager of this coalition is being able to sit in a room and just listen to how everybody has something to offer and everybody knows somebody. There's an incredible amount of power that we can have together. And so the Big Easy Budget Coalition, our essential strategy is we have like a three-pronged strategy. It follows kind of the budget process a little bit. So we're an organization that cares about research. We have researchers who are part of the coalition. And so we do as a coalition, do a lot of tracking of the budget, analysis of the budget. The budget's going to drop October 1st. And like, we're going to scramble to try to see, is the mayor's version of the budget going to drop until October 1st? And we're going to see, did we get what we asked for? Is it how much the money's going to policing? How much of it's going to youth? Or the programs that we're looking for there? But that document is not clear, as Nellie can attest to. And so, and not everyone has the ungodly amount of hours and headaches to be able to go through it. And so we have folks. We get to share that amongst each other. We get to share the labor that Nellie and ZBNO puts into doing that budget analysis. We get to do visualizations of the budget and share those around. And Vera, we're also doing a survey of like how people want to spend their taxes. So we have like a research focused prong to it, and then we have our community focused prong as well. So we're in the process of planning a budget town hall style event. We do political educations, we give public comments. We make sure that we are bringing people to all of the avenues that the city professes are ways for our voices to be heard. Even though that is definitely not the most effective way to impact the budget process, which is why we also have a government-focused strategy where we write ordinances that we want to have passed to change the process. We lobby folks. We talk to department heads and council members. We send them letters. We talk to their staff. If you imagine the opposition as a wall, right? We are pushing on the outside and the inside in order to be able to get movement. And the process of doing that, of pushing, it takes a lot of engagement. This is by no means an exhaustive amount, and nor do you need to read every word on this slide. But it's just to kind of show how the budget process is year round, and the Big Easy Budget Coalition in January and through March, we are figuring out the Big Easy deal, talking to people, meeting with council members, doing a postmortem on the budget. The next quarter after that, we're focusing on building our own infrastructure, crystallizing the Big Easy deal, making sure that we know exactly what we're advocating for, so that when we hit July and August, like right now, we can really be meeting with department heads, meeting with government actors to convince them, to tell them what they need to spend the money on. And then when they actually drop the budget and they start doing the hearings, we're at the hearings, we're mobilizing people, we're making public comments, we are holding press conferences, we're talking to media. And then once the budget is finalized, we do it all over again the next year. And so one of the beautiful things that has come out of this work is that folks, because of the power of the coalition, we have had department heads reach out to us and ask us what we are going to be advocating for this year, so that they can make sure that their budget and what they're asking for aligns with what we're asking for. Again, I would argue, putting on my organizer hat for a moment, the main goal, it would be such that we lived in a world where the people could determine where the money goes, and you wouldn't reach out to a coalition to determine what your budget should be for your health department. However, it is certainly better than the alternative. And so we are quite proud of that. The outgrowth, I've kind of alluded to it a little bit during this presentation, of this work is a thing we call the Big Easy deal. The Big Easy deal is basically the idea for it came from being like, well, what can we do? We don't want small investment. We want huge investment. You have this massive amount of money, once in a lifetime funds coming from the American Rescue Plan. How can we kind of treat this like the New Deal, basically, and really change and use it as a transformational influx of money? And so this is a link. I will drop this link in the chat so people can look at it. There's a visualization. You can like play with it. This is the Big Easy Deal from last year. We have a visualization that you play with and find out how much got funded, how much is still in the process. But the Big Easy Deal for last year kind of hinged on like four different buckets. We had our investments for young people, which was like zero fare for youth, home visits, expanded out of school to prime programming. We had our housing, which is the big bucket here, which is permanently affordable housing, healthy homes, anti-displacement fund. This was a tune of $100 million. And then we had our equity asks, which were direct cash assistance, food security, subsidizing public housing, labor audits. And then we had our community crisis intervention / community safety stuff, which was about basically setting up an office of gun violence prevention or violence prevention, which we now have, and also setting up the mobile crisis intervention unit, MCIU, which we also have now. And so the way that we and also I talk fast, so if I'm going too fast, no problem, I can slow down. But the way that we vet our asks, I think Nellie spoke on this a little bit about how do you impact the process. We try to make sure that what we are asking for in the Big Easy Deal aligns with what we've heard from our government partners is the easiest things for them to pass. Again, I would love for public officials to do their jobs and not have to do their jobs for them. But unfortunately, when you're organizing and advocating, there's a part of it. And so, we could go to the city and ask them, we want $100 million for this, right? And it's important, it's housing, everyone agrees. But there's a bunch of logistical things about like who would run that program? Who's going to manage that funding? Where's that funding going? Which department does it go to? Is it one time? Is it not one time? Will putting this money here today create the conditions for it to run autonomously later? Is there evidence that says how to best set up this program? All of these things are questions that we try to ask ourselves internally when we're crafting asks for the Big Easy Deal, so that we can maximize the likelihood that they will be adopted and that they will be effective. Especially numbers about how many people will it impact, and will it align itself with our values around centering folks who are multiply marginalized or disproportionately impacted by COVID. And so we put a lot of work into making sure that those asks are as effective and as clear as possible. And it's a really interesting process, if anyone wants to hear about it later, about how we do that democratically internally. Next is my newest slide, because we're still working on it. But currently, for the next Big Easy Deal, we have a rough estimate of what it's gonna look like. The process for creating the Big Easy Deal, as I alluded to, is a lot of conversation between community members, between our member organizations, between government officials, making sure we're not asking for duplicative things. There's a lot of negotiation goes in the process. But broadly, the big things that we are asking for around housing have not changed from last year. We got some wins around housing, but there still needs to be owner-occupied rehab and renter-occupied rehabilitation programs. We still need major permanently affordable housing. And so housing continues to be one of the biggest buckets that we ask for. Also in our survey that we have piloted last year and continue this year, housing continues to be #1 thing that people say the city doesn't fund enough of. So we continue to make sure that is a big ask for us. But additionally, we also are looking for increased out of school time for young people in programming. We're also trying to continue piloting programs that expand networks of supports for caregivers, especially for young people who are impacted by the criminal legal system, case managers, navigators. So that goes into that 18 million of youth support. And then for community safety, we're really looking to to kind of expand the work that I was already started around violence interrupters and Office of Violence Prevention, pushing for creating more accessible domestic violence intervention work for LGBTQIA plus individuals and Spanish-speaking people, as well as creating more diversion programs. And then for equity, equity is still a little TBD. Equity is we're still working on figuring out what goes in there. And I see your hand. Should I stop or should I keep going and then I'll come back for you for your hand?
Yeah, just keep going
Okay.
if you would, and then we'll come back to the questions.
No problem. So at the heart of it, so those are some of the things that we advocate for the Big Easy deal. At the heart of it, the kind of root of the proposals is like trying to address the root causes of violence and disorder. My background is really in structural violence research work. I'm a community. I do a lot of community violence, gun violence rehabilitation work. I am originally from, even though no one can ever guess from my accent, I'm originally from the South Side of Chicago. So I grew up in a neighborhood that has been like systematically divested in, and a lot of the discourse around violence is really focused on how do you stop people at the point in which they have already been forgotten for many generations and are currently living in desperate, desolate situations from then committing acts of violence, when the literature tells us and the research tells us and history tells us that actually the divestment, the removal of funds is the root of the violence. That like when you know, the only way to undo a systematic marginalization and isolation and a marginalization of a group of people is to recenter those people, resource them, and give and move money into those neighborhoods, period. And so the Big Easy Budget Coalition is like the best anti-violence program you can possibly create is by creating a thriving community in communities that we have systematically left behind. And so to kind of move on to the action part of like, what can you do? You know, joining the Big Easy Budget Coalition is super fun. We have lots of fun. Just like we have lovely meetings. We write cool letters. I spend a lot of my time doing formatting. So I make a lot of our presentations, our platforms, our flyers. One of my favorite things about being part of this coalition is just the sheer magnitude of sticky notes that we move through as we try to like use a democratic process to hear what people want. I think that like I'm incredibly immensely proud. We spent in particular, there's like the big sticky notes over here. We had this lovely retreat. We do I think biannual retreats at our office. There's always food and we talk about like, what do we want to do this year? Do we want to focus on the process? Do we want to focus on narrative change? Do we want to focus on where we move the money? And we really listen and hear each other out and offer an energy around solidarity that I think makes it really wonderful. We also have beautiful internal organization, if I do say so myself, around having caucuses and working groups. We have our own website. So there's lots of ways that you can be a part of what we're doing that are very fun and vibrant and lively. And more specifically, we have some events coming up. We have the Big Easy Deal 2025. We're like I'll be uplifting that and sharing that around. So if you're like a very low energy way of like getting in on the Big Easy Deal process is just sharing out the Big Easy Deal when we share it out and staying connected with us on social media or on our like listserv. We also gonna have a community town hall style / meeting, attending our events in a great way. We're pushing heavily for a community day of input where people can where after the budget process is finished. This year will be like a week or so before the budget is actually finalized, and so we really want to kind of take over that week. If not a whole day, to like have rallies, to have people speak, to have speakers, to like really show out. And that's another great way for folks to be excited and be a part of the coalition. And then of course we'll be doing presentations to the city hall around our stuff. And if you are really excited and you're a person who likes to write or is gifted with the words, you can present with us, and that would be wonderful. The budget is everyone's, and so that means everyone has the ability to speak on it and to speak impactfully, because we are all impacted by that process. So with that, I believe that is the last slide that I have. I do not know how I did on time, but I'm going to start answering questions.
All right, thank you, Cameron. That was very well done. A lot of great information there. I'm just going to add that as a climate activist and a person that is very engaged in the mitigation of climate change and fighting for environmental justice, I think that our city needs to include in our budget more substantial funding or funding in general to make sure that we are doing things to address making our city a more renewable city and a city that has zero emissions. I don't know how that will be reflected in our budget, but I do think that is one of the things that we do as we it just that is probably that has been missing because it's not people have not seen a need for it. But being at this code red moment in time where climate change is affecting us as a city on the front lines, we really do need to think about that. And so I just want to give that as food for thought up front.
Okay, good. Thank you, Pastor, for that food for thought. We're gonna chew on that. So we have a question by Miss Sylvia.
Yes, thank you, Sister Valerie. Thank you, Cameron. You pronounce your last name Okeke?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Your presentation, both of y'all's, was awesome. But my main question was, why is everybody not including mental health in the budget? That is more important than anything that I've listened to, and is hurting because I was just watching earlier today, an Asian lady was shot by the police. Her brother called the police she called 911, I'm sorry, because she was talking about getting a knife and doing bodily harm. So he called 911. So when they say they was calling the police, he must have remembered what other people went through getting killed. So he said, no, don't call the police, call the ambulance. But instead they said, we have to call the police now because this is a mental crisis. My thing is, no one is being trained how to deal with these mentally disturbed people. I worked in this field before Katrina, and after Katrina, they called a lot of us back, which Beacon Behavior has the hospital now. But why isn't mental health? Because children are even mentally disturbed by everything they have to see and grow up to. So that's what I don't understand. Please, no money. I heard no money allocated to mental health.
Okay,
Please
thank you, Sylvia.
explain it.
Yeah, Cameron or Nellie, any comments on that?
I mean, I think that I appreciate that comment. I agree that there's continues to be a chronic underfunding of mental health support. I think there's we work a lot. We do a lot of our budget stuff with the health department, and one of the things that in that particular case you described, right? One of the things that we tried to stand up and have been working on, and we're on the Vera is on the board of working with the city's mobile crisis intervention unit, which is literally supposed to be the people that you call instead. You call 911 and they get routed to the mobile crisis unit folks as opposed to going to the police. That process, and there's a community advisory board for that. That program is still being stood up and being funded, but it has not reached its a highest level of expansion at all. I think that to answer from my perspective at least, one of the things that's so hard around pushing for mental health is that it's one of the things that we run into in our field a lot, where we're like, you should put money into this, and everyone goes, well, we haven't fully proven 100% that this thing is perfectly effective, and so we cannot scale it up to its need. We have, and it kind of it slowly unfolds in a way that and we still have tragedies like that. But in general, I think one of the things that was in the Big Easy deal that we talked about last year that never really got out, and something that I've been wanting to come back to is exactly this, is building out this continuum around mental health. I think it's really important. I think that it doesn't show up nearly enough, especially for young people experiencing trauma. Like we have a trauma, there's a trauma recovery center. A lot of these things are things that we get. Once we get them, they're either really small or they're still getting up to speed. And agreed, yes. It is one of the things that the last thing I'll say about especially about policing is we this is what I call the like progressive that like when things that are conservative that have already existed are kind of grandfathered in and don't have to prove their value. Very infrequently does the police department show up and have to prove every single year, day in, day out, that they are an effective response to violence. They don't have to do that because people kind of are bought into the assumption that that is true. But if you have a new program, people are like, well, of course we should call 911. That's obvious. But whether or not we should have social workers show up or behavioral health therapists show up, they're like, ooh, well, where's the evidence for that? As opposed to like, where's the evidence that having someone showing up with a gun is more effective, right? It's an unfortunate thing that we're constantly dealing with as advocates of being like, here's our new thing, and it's easy to critique a new thing. It's hard to get people to question what they've grown up or known to be the status quo.
Thank you, Cameron. Nellie, you wanted to comment? Oh, that's fine.
I think Cameron covered it pretty well.
Okay.
To the extent that the city is doing mental health services at all, that lives within the health department. I will say that CBNO has been gathering, we're now doing so with the Big Easy Budget Coalition, but we've been gathering residents' perspectives on the budget since 2011. And year after year, housing and mental health and services for young people are the three priorities that come up the most often.
Okay, thank you. And one more question before we move on. With the monies that's allocated for the police department, it should also be a mental health training with them as well. Training period for the new officers that's coming from all over the United States and really don't know anything about New Orleans. We need training. So I hope some of that money is allocated toward mental health training and civilian training. And that's all.
I agree with you and encourage you to come out to the city hall. Sorry, two things. One, the city council hearing when the NOPD presents their budget to make a comment to that end. You can also just email the police chief and your council person to let them know this. The other thought is I'm actually connected with one of the educators at the police academy. And so if you would like a connection, I'd be happy to connect you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Miss Sylvia, you through? Because I want to say
yes,
Betty
ma'am, I'm
had a
finished.
question. Okay, good. Thank you, Sylvia. Betty have a question in the chat, but I want to say Nellie had answered that. We want to give Cameron a chance to answer as well. She was speaking of the schools, compare with other cities, the funding. You want to answer? Do you have anything to say about it, Cameron?
I mean, I think Nellie covered it pretty well. Like it is really hard to see the total investment. Yeah. It's just that it's hard to compare without being able to like actually have it in the budget the way other cities do. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Pastor Manning. I don't see anyone else.
All right, very good. Thank you. If there's no other questions, just want to give opportunity for Nellie and Cameron to leave us with any closing remarks as we prepare to close this forum. Nellie?
My only comment in closing is that don't give up. This is your money. This is our money. And our public officials, I think, it's pretty easy for them to ignore the fact that people really do care about this because it's complicated, because it's challenging to show up, because it's hard to be at every single meeting. So I'm here in your corner to help you and your communities understand what's going on and where to show up. if I can be supportive, please reach out. We are training up some more facilitators so we can have more people in more places. So if you would like to bring this presentation to your community, whether that is your parish community, your neighborhood organization, or anywhere else where you are convening, we're really very happy to help folks access this information. Thanks for the shout out in the chat. We do have a survey with the Big Easy Budget Coalition. We're hoping to have 400 responses to that by the end of this month. We're coming up on that, so please fill it out. If you have an email list that you can share it with, that would be really supportive as well. Last year, the mayor's survey received 68 responses. I repeat, 68 responses. We are working to have a broader audience. So please fill that out. Again, I'm Nellie at cbno.org. I'll drop my email in the chat again, but here to help. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Nellie, and thank you for your encouragement and your optimism. I absolutely echo that. Show up, make your voice heard, and know that we are making a difference. Thank you again for being here tonight. Cameron, any final thoughts? Cameron,
You went on mute, Cameron.
It's so embarrassing. First, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being able to talk about the Big Easy Budget Coalition. You can also find me at my email. We are always looking to have more people be a part of the coalition. We do have that survey going out. We will be presenting and showing up the mayor's budget process in person and showing how easy it is to actually engage people. But at the heart of it, I just find the work to be really, really wonderful. The thing that I love about the Big Easy Budget Coalition, outside of obviously we are doing really important stuff, we're moving important money and stuff, but also that I'm a firm believer that organizing towards the world we want to have should also be fun and joyous. And it's really important to me to, like, as the person kind of holding the space here, that our presentations are vibrant, that our conversations are lively, and that we, take part in the process. And so however you would like to get engaged with us, we'd be overjoyed to have you. It's just really important, especially for our folks out in the East. Like, we really want to have more folks join the coalition so that we can make sure that we can use the power that we have, the power of the people, in a way that really transforms the lives, especially for Black working class New Orleanians. So thank you all for having me.
Well said, well said. And Cameron, incidentally too, I am from the Chicagoland area, but on the Indiana side. So I was just
I got
back
cousins
there.
over there.
Okay, I was just back there a couple of weeks ago. Did some touristy things like go to the Naval Pier and go to fly over Chicago. So if you haven't been there, it's really a spectacular tourist attraction. So good to have somebody else from that area in the house. So thank you for those final thoughts, Cameron. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for including us in that work and for educating us so we can step in and participate as well too. So thank you to both of you. I'm going to take any announcements that anybody has tonight as we prepare to close this forum. Any things that we need to show up for, anything that we need to be aware of so that we can advocate or oppose or just get involved, understanding that there is power in our voices. Anybody?
Well, Pastor, I have a great announcement. I am wearing Just Beyond t-shirts. These t-shirts are for sale. You can reach out to Pastor Manning, but mainly to our queen, Sylvia McKenzie. And you can purchase these t-shirts, and this will help Just Beyond to get the word out to our community, our neighborhoods. This will help finance Just Beyond. So we really appreciate it. I'm trying to be a model, but I'm not a good model for that.
I hope you can see mine.
You are wonderful. Wonderful models. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Wonderful.
Thank
All
y'all.
right. Any other thank you for that commercial. Any other announcements?
No, Pastor.
All right, not hearing any. Let us close with a blessing on tonight as we go our separate directions. Oh God, I ask a blessing upon everyone gathered here. God, we thank you that even as we advocate for situations that are not equitable, nor just, God. We just thank you for the joy that we can have even in the process to be able to participate in it, God, for the laughter, for the spirit of unity. And God, we pray that that would rise up even more so that we would never be discouraged, God. I pray against any spirit of discouragement or hopelessness on this call, God. I pray that each one of us, even in our individual lives and situations, would know that all things are possible through you. And God, that we would never give up hope, that we would encourage one another, that we would help one another along the way, knowing that all of our journeys have some degree of difficulty, God, and that by each one's love and care and compassion, we might be able to make it another day. So, God, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity to hear from one another, and especially our panelists. And ask a blessing as we go our separate directions, that you would give us peaceful rest on tomorrow, and that you would give us strength to make it another day's journey. We ask this in the name of Almighty God, and I ask it in the name of my Savior and Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Amen.
God
Thank
bless y'all.
you. Appreciate
Come
you. Y'all
next-
be safe. Stay cool.
Come next
Thanks,
week and see the OPM.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you,
See you
brother.
next
Thank you,
week.
everybody. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.